Well, first of all, thank you for attending, and I know it's in the evening, Friday evening, no less. So yeah, very welcome that you're here. While I give my presentation, I will share my screen, and so hopefully that will help you to follow what I'm saying a little bit better. So let me start with doing that. So, okay, and I'm okay. So well, the topic of today's little presentation is to inform you about studying international relations, or studying at an MA program more generally at the University of Essex. My name is Han Dorissen. I'm one of the professors in the government department, and kind of a key bit of a little information that's on this slide that you may want to retain is my email address. You can see written under my name, H. Doris, Essex, AC, UK. If you have any questions, you should always feel free to send me an email and just mention that you were here at the presentation and that you want to follow up on something. Now, what we're going to do in the webinar is actually two things. I'm going to start off with a short seminar that gives you a little bit of an idea on the kind of topics that we study here at Essex, at least that I've been studying. That's been my core area, and also gives you a little bit of an idea on how we teach and so how we try to communicate with our students. The presentation shouldn't last very long. I'm guessing somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. And I want to give you the opportunity for some questions about the webinar, the little seminar afterwards. And then the second part is really about studying international relations, studying politics at the University of Essex, and of course also a lot of the things that I'm going to say hold for studying in the United Kingdom more general. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask them. Again, that presentation shouldn't last too long, and I really hope that we have plenty of opportunity for you to ask questions and just have a little discussion on what it means to study abroad. Maybe as a little bit of a background for me, I'm originally from the Netherlands, the neighboring country of the United Kingdom. I've been working in the United Kingdom for more than 20 years now, but before I studied and worked in the United States, and I worked in Norway, and I've lived in Germany for some time as well. So I've kind of lived and worked in various places. I've also been quite regularly to Japan. I've collaborated with colleagues at the University of Kobe and Waseda University. So there's a bit of background about me. Okay, let's start with my little mini lecture, and it's going to be mini, so not going to be very long. I would like to talk about peace building and political trust, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about why trust matters, why trust is such an important concept in politics, and why it's particularly important for efforts to assist countries in kind of rebuilding themselves. And then I'm going to, as an illustration, I'm going to use research that I've done in Haiti. This is with a co-author, Suzette Bakaki. She's also a professor here at the department, and kind of explain a little bit the patterns that we observe there. So, why would trust matter for peace building? And so this is it may look like a complex model, but it's actually quite simple. And I think the start of really to think about, why trust matters. And in politics, we find that for people to kind of to work together and to engage with the government, it's very important that they trust the government, that they trust the people with whom they are trying to achieve something together. And the main reason why we think trust is so important is because very often, if you work with other people, if you communicate with other people, that implies that you're taking a bit of a risk. You think about it, kind of an example that you may think about, like you decide with a group of people to clean up the park. Then, you're going to make an effort. You expect these other people to show up. And so when you go to the park and you would find that you're the only one there, you may feel foolish, but you also may feel that you're not able to accomplish, to get very much done. And so the idea that you're willing to make the effort, make the investment, is based on the expectation that other people will make the effort and will make the investment as well. Now, of course, agreeing to clean up the park is a rather small example, but think about a country that has just gone through a war or through a serious conflict. It's quite easy to see that people do not have an awful lot of trust, that they find it very difficult to be confident in their government, in the new rulers, that they find it difficult to trust people from ethnic communities with whom they may have had very strained relations during the conflict. So particularly in these countries, in these situations where people have gone through conflict, trust is very often not very much present, and that's important to know. Then so that's kind of the general background why we think about this. And then so if you look at the model, we think like, okay, trust implies that people will have to take risks. That risk deals with the communication, how they talk to other people, what they are willing to tell other people. It also relates to the cooperation, that they're willing to work with them together. But good communication and cooperating well leads to better results. And so that's an important part of kind of the core model of why trust matters. But then, why all this complexity at the beginning of the model? And I think this really comes down to you can imagine two key statements. And so, for example, you could say the victims of conflict lack trust. And that's, it's a statement you hear quite often. People say like, well, people are unable to trust when they've gone through something as traumatic as a civil war. However, sometimes people say something that's a little bit more specific, a little bit more to the point. For example, they say the victims of the conflict, they don't trust the government to protect them. And this is very much, the second statement actually gives us a much better idea about what may be going on. It's not simply about the ability of people to trust or not to trust, but it's asking, can they trust a particular organization, their local government? Can they trust their government to do something for them, something specific? So think about victims of conflict looking for help or for assistance. Now, they might really not trust their local government to provide them with that assistance. But they still may feel that the local government is able to do something else. Maybe the local government is able to build roads or to maybe even provide them with some basic security, some basic protection. It's just that they don't really trust the local government to help them. Okay, so the key aspect that I want you to get away from is that trust is really a relationship. It's a relationship between a person who trusts, and the difficult word here is truster, and the organization or the persons that they want to trust. And those are the trustees, so the people that you put your trust in. Now, the second point, and that also comes out in this model, is that you can then start thinking about different reasons why some people may find it hard to trust an organization. Okay. So one obvious one, and that's quite often really, really present in post-conflict situations, is that the government has very little capacity. So the victims of the conflict, they would like to get assistance, but they understand that the government simply does not have the resources, is not able to really help them. They don't have enough money. There is, the international community may not be providing the help that these organizations would need to be effective in providing assistance. So that's one reason why it might be difficult for them to trust their government. There could also be another reason, and that might be a little bit more what people very often have in mind. So maybe they feel like, well, the local government, they could help me, but these people are corrupt. They are taking the money they get from the international community and they're putting it in their own pockets. They're not giving it to me. They may only give it to people from their ethnic community. So they're, I'm a minority community here. Nobody cares about us. It's whenever there's money, it always goes to the same people. So in that particular case, it's not necessarily that the government isn't capable of helping you. It's simply that the government officials lack the integrity to help you. So they're corrupt, to put it another way. There's a third reason that occasionally people point out to, is that even if a government has the ability to help you, even if they are actually spending the money, they may not really be looking at your interests when they are spending the money. And I use here the word inclusiveness. They're not asking you about what is it that you need? What kind of help do you actually need in this particular situation? Governments very often find it simply easier to build a road, to, maybe build nice offices for themselves, thinking that that is what people expect them, that they have, good offices and good place for the government to work from. But in fact, people want to be heard. People want to say, well, if you build a road, it should not be a big road. It should maybe be a narrow road. Or if we really want to have a school, but it should be a school where that's easily accessible to us, where we can send our children. So really, the whole point about inclusiveness is, are you listening to the people that you're trying to serve? Now, so this is a simple model. It's not necessarily my own model. The origins is done by people that study organizations, a person called Meyer. But we found it very useful to think about what happens in post-conflict situations. Okay, so here I kind of summarize again the things that we're looking at: the ability of organizations, whether are they capable, can they deliver, their integrity. Do they really intend to deliver what they promise? Are they reliable, honest, predictable? And inclusiveness. Are they actually trying to align their activities with the interests and the concerns of the local population? Are they listening to these people? Okay, so why Haiti? Well, first of all, Haiti is a fascinating country to study. It's a very small country, but it's a country that's gone through an enormous amount of issues. It has had a civil war. It has a transition of a autocratic leader to something that is a little bit more democratic. But since then, there has been an awful lot of political instability. There also have been quite a lot of natural and sometimes kind of half natural, half man-made disaster. Most famously, Haiti suffered from a really serious earthquake in 2011, if I remember the date correctly. It's a small country, so basically that earthquake pretty much affected the whole of the country. And at that particular point, the government really showed that it was not able to cope with the aftermath of the earthquake. Now, in response, there has been an awful lot of international attention and trying to help Haiti. It is one of the poorest countries in the world. So this involves international organizations like the United Nations. There have been peacekeepers in Haiti. It involves international non-governmental organizations, Save the Children, Action Aid. So pretty much every organization in the world that helps countries in this kind of situations has a presence in Haiti. And there's also a very dense network of local community organizations. And all of these, kind of interestingly, almost replaced the national government. There isn't actually that much more of a presence of the national government. And that sometimes people talk about Haiti as a republic of non-governmental organizations. So it's literally the voluntary organizations that have taken over. Now, what we were really interested in is understanding how much trust there is. And we were interested in understanding whether we could recognize these different dimensions of trust. And to do so, we did a survey. We asked people in Haiti what they thought. And the way we did it, we did it in a lot of different ways, but what I'm going to talk about here is we asked them to think about words that they would associate with particular forms of organization. So the question was like, if you think about the role of the United Nations in Haiti, what kind of words would come to mind? And there was a long list of words, and they could pick multiple words from that list. And these words included things like trust, just general, but also things like capable, are they competent, are they listening to us, stuff like that. So what did we find? I mean, this kind of gives the general overview. And so the percentages are the number of people that associated that particular word, like, for example, in the first line, corruption, with a particular organization. And so you can see that, nearly everybody, for example, associated the word corrupt with local churches, which is remarkable. Okay? But also, a very high number of people associated the word corrupt with the United Nations, nearly 75%. 3 out of 4 Haitians thought when they asked them about the United Nations, they would say, oh, they're corrupt. Then, so those are kind of striking numbers in themselves. So there's a couple of things that really stand out when you look at these numbers here. I mean, the first of all is that the numbers, the 4 items on top, corruption, arrogance, unpredictable, incapable, they're all negative words. And they selected much, much more often than the more positive words, which kind of we've put here on the bottom. Respect, autonomy, helping Haiti, communicating effectively. So that's quite really striking. The second thing is that, and this kind of comes out with the bold, the numbers that I put in bold phrase. So these are what organization of these 4 is selected most often when we look at a particular word. And so I just already mentioned, like corruption is most often, most people associate that with local churches. Arrogance, however, which is in the second line, that's most often associated with the United Nations. So it's really they're seen as a distant organization. Unpredictable, in this case, with international non-governmental organizations. So there seems to be people that are not quite sure what they get from them and when they can expect them to deliver. Now, when you go to the positive words, you actually notice that there are quite a few bold numbers in these in the column for local community organizations. And these are generally referring to terms that deal with, are they listening to us? Are they helping us directly? So this comes out very, comparatively speaking, kind of a positive association for local community organizations, but particularly as it relates to basically inclusiveness, to listening to them. The ability, however, which is also kind of worthwhile mentioning, that's really where the United Nations stand out. They are the highest percentage on competence. And then finally, the international non-governmental organizations and local churches, they very often are seen as communicating more better. Now, the final thing to kind of note here is that if you look at kind of general terminology as, trustworthiness, just general, do you trust them? The percentages are really, really low. So only about 1 out of 20 people would say that they trust the United Nations. 1 out of 10 that they trust the local community organization. So the basic willingness, ability to trust is clearly quite low in Haiti. So what does this mean? So when we do research like that, can we say something about, what are the implications? And I think there are some lessons to be learned here, and they relate to these different dimensions, and they relate to the idea of understanding that trust is related to the willingness to take risks. So first of all, so organizations should be providing clear information and be willing to listen. So the idea that you communicate and that you include the victims or the people that you're trying to help into your work, I think that's a very key understanding. And in that sense, the role of local community organizations is very important. It's also related to risk because it basically allows people to assess what are the risks of working with these organizations and what can we expect to get out of it. The other kind of guidance that comes out of this, that trust needs to be built over time. So it's very reasonable to expect that people are not simply, making a decision on do we trust these organizations or not, but that they look at what these organizations do for them, whether they are actually helping them, whether they are actually listening to them. And that's based on positive experiences that they will become more trusting, and based on negative experiences that they will kind of become more wary, become less trusting of these organizations. And the final guideline here, or suggestion that we make, is that there's really opportunities for collaboration and benefiting from the different strength that different organizations have. So the United Nations, even though it's seen as arrogant and rather distant, they're also seen as competent. People do realize that, when a big international organization comes in with big machinery, it can really help. And so therefore, for the United Nations, it makes an awful lot of sense to collaborate with local organizations. And international non-governmental organizations are doing this a lot more and a lot better than big international organizations like the UN. And so these opportunities of, looking where there is room for collaboration, looking for opportunities to working together are clearly there. And again, this is also, there's a technical term which basically means that they pool the different risks across organizations, and that makes sense. And so, I mean, there is, this is underlying and making international organizations and making local organizations more effective in addressing the needs of victims. So before I go on, and so this is pretty much what I had to say, but before we go on and talk more about studying at Essex, I would give you, do you have any questions about I was just saying, my little presentation? And let me maybe stop sharing for a second so I can.
皆様、質問などございましたら、チャットの方でも質問いただいて大丈夫です。
If again, if you have a question, you can also put it in the chat, and I'll. If it's in Japanese, somebody has to translate it for me. But otherwise, I'll make an effort. Okay, that's all good. Rory, if you don't mind, what I would like to. Oh, wait a moment. Give me some time to type. Okay, now I'm waiting. I mean, while we're waiting, I mean, so maybe if simply thinking about, when, why does, research like this, and what could it possibly have to do with studying in an MA program? So as part of your master's program, you will do research and write a dissertation. And, one of the opportunities that, research like Dr. Zeta and I have done is that we could share our data with you. And so if you think like, oh, I'm really interested in Haiti and I want to know more about why people trust organizations in Haiti, or maybe you have a different question, but you still feel that the questions that we asked could be possibly useful for you, these data are then, we can share them with you. You will get a supervisor, and so the supervisor could help you in actually, doing your own bit of research and helping you with that. And so that's one of the nice things of doing a master's program anywhere, but also in the UK, is that you actually engage in your own little piece of research, and that you, simply you move from being a consumer of knowledge, listening to what your lecturers have to say, to somebody who's actually generating knowledge, for her or himself, and that's always very exciting. And so that's really, I think that's one of the things you should be looking forward to if you start enrolling on a master's program. Still waiting for student A. Rory, maybe student A, if he or she finds it difficult to type, I know you have different keyboards and everything, and maybe he or she could simply ask the question in Japanese and then you translate it for me. Would that help? That's coming. Okay, well, this is an excellent question. To be honest, this is really strong question. And you're right. So when they talk about when security becomes part of the role of international organizations, and particularly something in the context of peacekeeping is called robust peacekeeping. So this is the idea that to address the underlying concerns that people have, that you occasionally have to use military force. So peacekeepers or international organizations are not simply helping, they're not simply providing humanitarian aid, they're actually kind of engaging actively in the security situation. And that does make things more complex, no doubt about it. So on the one hand, there is a real risk that the international organizations are seen as taking a particular side. And international organizations in particular, of international non-governmental organizations, INGOs, are really worried about that. They don't want to be associated with a particular side in a conflict because it undermines the effectiveness of their work. It also risks their security of the people that work for the organizations. On the other hand, it's also the case that very often a very primary concern of people in a post-conflict situation is the security situation. They still feel rather insecure. And even the work of humanitarian organizations can be really undermined by the insecurity in a country. And to put it simple, if you bring in aid into a country and subsequently aid gets stolen or it gets attacked by a rebel group or by government forces for that matter, that's kind of an immediate threat to the people that are working in the country, providing the aid, but also the people that are relying on that kind of aid. How to grow trust in that kind of situation? I mean, to me, my sense is that a basic security is important. However, that there's a very careful balance that needs to be struck. And so if international organizations are going in, overly militarized, they're really risking, losing the trust of the people on the ground. They're making people basically afraid of engaging with these organizations. And then being foreign doesn't help because you very often don't really understand the situation on the ground very well. And again, this is where actually understanding what's going on locally and investing in understanding what's going on locally is very important. I mean, interestingly enough, a really clever scholar who written a lot about this, the lady's called Séverine Orteser. She's also pointed out that if security concerns make it difficult for aid workers to actually engage with the local population, so that they end up just working in very restricted environments. Now that's a problem as well. So a lot of non-governmental organizations like ActionAid or Red Cross, they are quite worried about the safety of their personnel. And they sometimes really make it very difficult for the people that work for these organizations to really talk to people locally. And again, it shows another trade-off. It's important to engage with the communication also because it's needed to build trust. But again, it's a great question, and we don't really have a very simple answer to it, unfortunately. But you point at something that is really truly important. Given the time, Rory, is it okay for me to do the second presentation? Yeah, okay, thank you. So I'm going back to share my screen, and I'll tell a little bit more about studying at Essex. Here we are. Okay. And again, you see here my email address. Be sure to see that. Okay. So what about studying international relations at the University of Essex, and particularly, more generally, what about studying in the master's program? So I'm going to give you here as much and as honest information as I possibly can. But it's also a little bit of an advertisement on the quality of the University of Essex. So, be aware of that. I'm honest, but I'm maybe slightly biased. And so let's start with some good facts about the University of Essex and things that you would benefit from if you enter an MA program here. We are generally recognized as a good department. So studying the government department or the political science department at Essex, we're a separate department. All universities in Essex are being in the United Kingdom are being evaluated on the quality of their research. If they use various dimensions to look at, for example, also the impact that the department has, or the general research environment that the department has. One aspect where we did particularly well is the quality of the publications that we had, and we were considered to be the second department in the United Kingdom in that respect. We're also a very large department, and so this is a large department, more than 50 academics producing generally very high quality work. If you simply look at all the dimensions, we came in on the 6th place, which was a bit of a disappointment, I have to say, because in previous rounds we actually generally came in as one of the best, a little bit higher ranked. At teaching, and another way, I mean, Brits love to evaluate their departments and their organizations, and at teaching quality, they have a bronze and a silver and a gold rating for teaching quality. We came out as gold, so we're considered to be good teachers. That's good. Our quality of research is generally recognized also in other rankings, and these rankings go up and down a little bit. But we're generally recognized as a good place to study political science. In the 2022 QS World University Rankings, we came in very high, 9th place. I think we dropped a little bit. But, we're in that sense considered to be one of the main places to study politics in Europe. Possibly even in the world. A kind of a fun fact is that so in Britain, there's something called Regius professorships. So these are professorships that are appointed by the king, but in this particular place it was appointed by the Queen. So these are professorships in particular areas. So there's one in political science, and since about 6 years, that professorship was awarded to the University of Essex. The current Regius professor is Professor Christian Gladich, who is studying international relations. So he's one of the people who study conflict and study international relations at the University of Essex. And then finally, we are extremely international. You would find people from pretty much every continent working in the good department of government. In total, we have about 50 people working in the department. I think about a quarter of them are from the United Kingdom. Others are from the United States, Europe. We used to have a Japanese colleague. Unfortunately, he went back. But we still have people from Southeast Asia and people from Latin America working in the department. So postgraduate degrees, how does that kind of work? Now, I think the key thing to remember is that a postgraduate degree at British universities is a 1-year degree, but it's a full academic year degree. And the other thing to remember is that the year is slightly different from the year in Japan. So we start here in October, and the year runs until September. Within that year, and so most, I'm going to give you a little bit of an exception in a second, but most degrees here are indeed 1-year degrees. And there's a broad set of courses that you can take. So they kind of cover different aspects of the study of politics. I think apart from a general politics degree. The ones that are probably most interesting for you are the degrees kind of listed slightly lower. We have an international relations degree, a degree in conflict resolution, and a degree in global and comparative politics. And these are the kind of the 3 MA degrees that have the clearest international orientation. They really study either international politics or particular aspects of international politics like conflict, or they really study kind of the comparative political systems and political behavior across countries. As you'll see on the bottom, we also have a couple of newer degrees, where probably the environmental degree might be the most interesting one. I mean, it has also a very clear international side to it. And for those of you who might be really interested in political science research, the degree on social data science could well be something that you would want to know more about. I said we have 3 types of masters. I mean, 2 of them, the MA and the MSc, are 1-year degrees. We also have an MRes, which is not an awful lot of university students take that one, but that's a 2-year degree. And it really kind of combines an MA program with the first year of your PhD aspect. So that's something you if you're interested in, you really have to kind of know what you're getting yourself into. It is basically the step up to doing a PhD. The difference between a master's of arts or a master's of science, they're not very big. The key thing to note is that in a master's of science, it's actually there for people who really want to do more on research methods. So if you're more interested in statistics and doing research, a master's of science may be for you. But it also would then imply that when you look at your optional modules, you basically take modules that have a more of a mathematics statistical component in there. Otherwise, as far as substance is concerned, there is the MA and MSc programs largely are identical, so there's not much difference there. In red, I also put up that we have 2 dual degrees. One has been running for a number of years now. That's with the Kobe University. The other one is, I believe it's about to go in to start. It's with Waseda University. In both of these cases, you basically do a 1-year degree at the University of Essex, and then you do your 2nd year, or the other year, at the university in either Kobe or Waseda. And basically at the end of the complete degree, you would have 1 degree, which is from Essex, and you would have another degree, which is from either Kobe or Waseda. So that's in a sense, as you probably know, in Japan, normally MA degrees take 2 years. So you would still, within the same 2-year period, you would also get a Essex degree. So kind of this just to highlight the kind of the biggest programs, the 3 areas: political science, international relations, and political economy. The next one kind of shows these are the degrees that you can actually choose if you want to do a dual degree with Kobe and Waseda. I believe that we've actually extended it in the most recent round to also include the social science, the social data science degree in that list. So it's generally dual degrees are available across the board, but not all degrees. You have to be a little bit careful about that. Okay, so if you go to the website of the government department, you will find all the different courses, and a module is basically a topic that you choose within a course available. But that gave me a little bit of an idea on how normally an MA degree is structured, and this is very similar across programs in the United Kingdom. Okay, if we ignore for a little moment all these modules mentioned here, they will become obvious in a second. So the standard structure is that you take 4 modules throughout the year. So normally that means that you take 4 half modules in the autumn, and you take another 4 in the spring. But when we normally talk about a module, we think about it something that covers the whole year, and quite a few of our modules do. But you can also combine, and so you could say either 8 half-year modules or 4 full-year modules. But that's really the thought element of our program. So you go to seminars, you discuss topics with your professors, you do the readings, you complete assignments, and normally based on these assignments, so the coursework you do, you get a mark for your coursework, and so that's the first part of your MA program, and that is pretty much finished around April. So you start in October, and by April you've got completed all that kind of work. Okay, so there are some restrictions on what you can take and what you have to take. Every PMA course has one module that you are required to take. We call this the core module. So if you do the course in international relations, you have to take the module on international relations. If you do conflict resolution, there's a module on conflict resolution. And again, these modules tend to run throughout the full year. So that's really like 1/4 of your work is really on the core topic of the course that you're taking. There's also a certain element on research methods. And so basically 2 modules deal with research methods. This is, normally speaking, an introduction into methods, where you get an overview of the different approaches that are out there, and then a more detailed introduction into a particular approach. So this can be field research, qualitative research. It can also be statistical research. For those of you who feel like, oh no, I know what I want to get very technically trained, you can also almost immediately start in more high-level statistical modules, and then take that throughout the year as well. So there's a little bit of freedom there what you do, but you have to do some research methods throughout the year. And then there are a lot more options out there. So we say here, some people really like to do the theory modules, and that's perfectly possible. In most courses, however, you can, but you don't have to. So it's covered in the core. And then there are the optional modules, and the list of modules that were right on the right of the page. Here they are. They kind of just are examples of the kind of modules that we offer. And you will notice that a lot of them really have relevance for international relations, if you want to study that. Others are much more focused on British politics. So if you would like to know more about British politics, it's not listed here, but there's a module on the role of media in British politics. So it's a really kind of a broad set of modules that are available. They're not always exactly the same in every year, but we make sure that all the different fields are covered sufficiently. And so you either do theory and one optional module, or you pick 2 of these optional modules. And again, we're talking here about the full year. So all your coursework is pretty much done by April. And then it's really about your dissertation. And you start thinking about your dissertation actually in January already. You get a supervisor assigned to you. You start getting more detailed in what the topic is that you want to study, and how you want to study it. Sometimes already start doing some research. And then during the summer, this gets more intensified, and you actually write it and then submit it in early September, late August. Okay. Now, it's very important to understand that you're not on your own when you do this kind of stuff. So you meet your professors in your modules, but we're also, all of us have 2 hours per week office hours, where we have to be, and we are in our office, and you can simply knock on our door and ask us questions. A lot of students prefer to send an email and ask us for to meet up. And again, the department really puts a lot of pride in being available for the students. So you either get a response by email, or people say like, oh, why don't we have a meeting, and you can come to the office and we'll discuss. And you will find that's very common, and students really make use of that. And our MA students are in that sense the most important students that we have. We understand that they may well have questions about their dissertation that need to be addressed rather urgently, and so we try to help out as much as we can. So while you're doing your dissertation, I mean, there is the academic supervision. You have your supervisor. He or she will help you as much as you can. Collectively, we have workshops, and there's also, we're trying to think beyond simply writing your dissertation, but also what it means for your general professional development. So what makes you a good researcher, and also what helps you to figure out what you want to do next with your degree. I'm going to give myself a few minutes to really kind of rush through this. And this is about, why we are so good. So we're good at teaching, research, and other stuff as well. Bear with me. If you look at the pictures, you can actually get a little bit of an idea on how we look as a university. We're based outside Colchester in a parkland. Colchester is about an hour by train from London. So it gives you a little bit of an idea on where we are. So I've told you already, we got an excellent evaluation for our teaching. That's good. We're generally seen to be a good university as far as research is concerned. I mentioned the last research excellent framework, we ended up 6th with 5 universities above us, therefore. This is a world ranking where the Department of Government actually managed to come in on the 10th place, which if you look at the other list of universities out there, is prestigious indeed. Okay, here we are. I think, apart from these rankings, which are, to be honest, are largely based on publications, I think it's much more important to see the kind of people that are in the department. And so you see 2 pictures here. The one on the top is Professor Ismene Gonzalez. And so one of the teachers in international relations. And in this particular case, she's presenting to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Sweden. And again, there's a real engagement with policymakers, with talking to an international audience. And it's also a real expertise on, how politics works. Even if we're not, very often we're not part of it ourselves, we kind of observe what's going on quite closely. The gentleman on the bottom is Professor Rob Johns. His specialization is largely in British politics, Scottish politics in particular, but again, makes a very regular appearance on television. And kind of talks to, is quite well known in the country in his opinion about what's going on. Now, so expertise, we do this internationally, but we also organize roundtables at the university. So basically to kind of understand, when topics come up, like, okay, what's our opinion about it? What do we make of it? Think about major elections. Think about events in the world, like at the moment, for example, the conflict in the Ukraine. So what people do with our degree. Now, of course, most of our students, the MA students, are very international. The core of it is European British, but they're from everywhere, which makes it a bit hard to understand, to see what kind of jobs they go into. It's very much country dependent. But you do see a fair amount of PGT students, so MA students, taking up jobs in international organizations. So we had students go to NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, going to the World Bank, the European Central Bank, YouGov USA. It's a polling organization. So YouGov is a British organization, but this is the American branch of it, and also the United Nations Development Program. Our students are kind of singled out because employers recognize that they have experience doing research, and so that makes it very attractive for employers to look at them. It also makes it quite attractive for other universities when they're looking at PhD programs to think about hiring or offering scholarships to our students. So we've had MA students going on to study at Harvard, Duke, both in the United States, University of South Carolina as well in the United States, European University Institute, which is in Florence in Italy, and in Britain, Oxford, the LSE, and the UCL. So these are all kind of, Oxford is Oxford, and London School of Economics and University College London, they're both based in London. The other thing which helps our students, and again, particularly when they look at PhD program scholarships, is that dissertations quite regularly end up being end up being publications, and very often then publications between the student and the supervisor. So with all kind of stuff, I already mentioned the roundtables. We have an extensive Women in Politics event every year. We run an annual student conference. The university societies are very important, and British universities, and so for us in particular, the Model UN, Amnesty International are all societies that a lot of students are engaging with. And we like the space in the department. So I'll show you a big picture of the university. A particular part of it is ours. There's a really nice common room, free coffee, and being there. And then so it's a bit of a joke, but still, you may think like, oh, Britain, that's going to be extremely wet. That's not so much the case for Essex. So this is where we are, the little red circle on the dot. So as you can, if you think about Great Britain, so that's a little bit above London towards the coast, and it's actually the driest spot in the United Kingdom. Now, actually this is another picture, and yes, students occasionally do lay on the ground and enjoy this nice weather, like today. It's actually pretty good weather here. Of course, not all the days. But it is it's a nice place to study. So if there are any questions you may have, I give you some place where you can look at. So we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter page, there's a web page, and there's an administrator for the department. And so this is all that I had to say about Essex. Any questions? And I'm going to stop sharing here so we can actually see the questions.
皆様何か質問などございましたら、チャットの方でご質問いただいても大丈夫です。日本語でご質問いただいても大丈夫です。
Again, feel free to ask questions. I mean, so one of the people here is Chloe, and so she runs it's part of the international program dealing with Asia and Japan in particular. So she's able to help you as well. And I said, feel free to ask your question in Japanese, and I'm sure that Rory will be able to translate it for me. But also, you can also type it in if you want to. So we just take it a little bit easy.
皆様大丈夫そうでしょうか？何か質問などございますか？大丈夫そうですね。
Are you okay with that?
I think that
Francis mentioned it already. Oh, did he? Okay, yeah. So I just checked it.
Yeah,
so
Francis said you can do that.
Right, okay. I just wanted to confirm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, because yeah.
You've got a big gap.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So maybe I have a question. See this picture of this beautiful cat that belongs to student B. So what's the name of the cat? That's
質問などございますか？大丈夫そうですかね。
Sorry, before we end the presentation, is it possible for me to share about the scholarship information, just in case, students might be interested in?
Sure.
Great, thank you. Give me 1 second. Yep, I hope you can see my screen now. Let me enlarge it. Yep, so I put it here as 2023 to 2024 because our 2024 scholarship information is not confirmed yet, but we usually will be offering the same scholarship. It's just that every year we have a kind of like approval process that we need to go through. So first of all, we offer Academic Excellence International Master Scholarship. So this is eligible for students who achieve grade B or CGPA 2.5 out of 4 from their bachelor degree. They will be eligible for £4,000 automatic access. So which means that, you know, you do not need to submit a separate applications to apply for this scholarship. It's automatically assessed when you put in application for your course. Besides that, this year we also offer a new scholarship. We are hoping that this will continue for the next year as well. This is called a Vice Chancellor Global Talent Scholarship. It's up until 50% of the tuition fee discount. This is available for undergraduates and also postgraduate studies at Essex. And this one requires students to put in application separately. And we will ask you to write a statement about why you think that you are deserved with this scholarship, and also what's your experience in your studies as well as of your work experience as well. So the application deadline is on 31st of May for this year. We are hoping that if we continue for next year, the application deadline should be around that period of time as well. Okay. As mentioned by Hans and also Rui, if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask us through the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask in Japanese. I'm sure that Rui will be able to translate for us as well.
Thank you for the useful information.
Thank you.
何か奨学金に関して質問したいことなどございますか？大丈夫そうですかね。
If you are shy, you can also add me through Line. I'm gonna enlarge it again. This is my Line ID. If you are shy and you would like to, you know, ask more personal questions, please feel free to add me in Line. I also have the QR code for our Student Union Instagram, where you can see all of the students live and what is happening in the campus, as well as some of the accommodation information will be available here as well. On top of my presentation slide, there is a QR code for you to download our international prospectus. If you would like to know more about the university in general, please feel free to download the international prospectus. And that's my email, chloe.lim@essex.ac.uk. Thank you.
Thank you. この画面にLINE が QR コードがあるということなので、もし質問がございましたら、ぜひクロエさんに質問してみてください。So, I'm gonna just end this meeting now. 皆様、
Thank you, everyone.
はい、皆様本日はご参加いただきまして
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. それで終わりにいたしますので、ご退出いただいて大丈夫です。
Thank you.